Christmas urges us to reflect on the mystery of the Incarnation, and artists through the ages have been inspired to represent this moment in history when God became man, trying to fit the infinite into the finite frame of their canvas. But this would have never happened without the cooperation of one young woman, the Virgin Mary.
It's important to be really fascinated about the Nativity and the art. Really is because that's what Christians have done since the beginning. You know, they've been fascinated by that. In fact, they couldn't get enough about the story of the early Christians. They heard about it. It was transmitted. Of course, it was there in the Gospel, but there were many other Gospels. There were many other stories, and not everything was approved by the Church. But it was natural that, you know, the Christians who loved our Lord so much and loved our Blessed Mother, there was this attempt, you know, to get at least a better idea of what it looked like when the child Jesus was born, you know? Starting, of course, with getting a deeper idea of what the Blessed Virgin looked like. What is significant about the earliest icons of Our Lady is that they had this reputation of having been painted by St. Luke, right? Of course, St. Luke had a huge reputation of having been the evangelist and having written the longest narrative of the infancy of Christ and the life of Our Lady, and he recounts the Annunciation and so forth. So he came to be known as the painter of Our Lady. And now one of the earliest images we have of this icon, it's in Rome, it's in the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, and it basically dates to the 4th century, and it's called Salus Populi Romani. Now, if we fast forward to the 5th century, the wife of the emperor back then in the 5th century, her name was Eudocia. She had a bit of a rivalry with her sister and everything to who was going to be the empress and so forth, but she was a very pious woman, and she ended up going on a pilgrimage there to the Holy Land, and she wanted to sort of garner the atmosphere of piety in the royal court in Constantinople. So she brought back a lot of relics from the Holy Land, beautiful relics that were of great value, and one of the most important ones she brought back was this icon of Our Lady. When she brought it back, and everybody was, you know, all astir, what is this? Wow, look at this. It started to be venerated because it was placed into a kind of a rectangular, you know, format. Basically, it was the face that Luke had done, and the surrounding part was added. The shoulders and so forth were added later. We don't know exactly when, but we're going to say around the 5th century. As you can see, it shows Our Lady holding the child on her lap, but she's pointing at him. You know, she's pointing at him. And these images, that many of these would later be copied, were called the hodigateria, which is the Greek term, which means he who shows the way to salvation, right? Because the emperor at that time had summoned the Council of Ephesus, where there was a big debate about the true natures of Christ and you know, the divine nature, the human nature, because the Bishop of Constantinople had doubted that Jesus really had a divine nature, meaning that Our Lady was not, as we said in Greek, Theotokos, Mother of God. In the end, Nestorius was condemned, and it was declared that she was indeed Theotokos, that is, Mother of God. And so there she is, the Mother of God, pointing the way to salvation.
The only really effective apologia for Christianity comes down to two arguments, namely the saints the Church has produced and the art which has grown in her womb. A theologian who does not love art, poetry, music, and nature can be dangerous. Blindness and deafness towards the beautiful are not incidental, they necessarily are reflected in his theology.